ladies and gentlemen. It looks like we're ready. We have everything ready for tonight's lesson 2 on Garifuna history with Dr. Theodore Aranda, all the way from Dangriga, Belize. Okay, so we're gonna do the introduction real quick, and then we're gonna get right into it. All right, here we go. Okay. Garifuna American Heritage Foundation United proudly presents the Clifford J. Palacio Garifuna Language and Culture Academy online. It's every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, through www.lmbroots.com in the Bronx, New York, and www.radiocentroamerica.com in Los Angeles. Classes are free and for the entire family. Download the homework or handout from Facebook's Garifuna Language and Culture Academy page or from www.garifunaheritagefoundation.org. All radio programs will be recorded and archived on YouTube's GAFU channel for on-demand listening. This project is made possible in part by a grant from the Alliance for California Traditional Arts in partnership with the Walter and Elise Haas Fund and the William and Flora Hewitt and the James Irvine Foundation. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome tonight. Welcome to this wonderful program, which is made possible by the Alliance for California Traditional Arts, as you heard it. Also, made possible by the Garifuna American Heritage Foundation United through the Clifford J. Palacio Garifuna Language and Culture Academy in Los Angeles, online through radiocentroamerica.com and through www.lmbroots.com radio in the Boogie Down Bronx. I want to welcome tonight Dr. Theodore Aranda, who is with us tonight, ready for today's lecture. So, Dr. Aranda, the microphone is yours. Welcome tonight, and we are listening to you. Arufudahati.
Thank you very much, Ronnie, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to sort of give a short and a brief review of what we said last week, and then we go on to the questions that were asked. I have 3 questions that were asked of me. The first thing is that the story of the Garifuna people had been told as if the Garifuna people began and evolved, so to speak, out of a shipwreck. The story is one that we have examined, and we cannot accept that story. The story was that Garifuna people are a mix of Arawaks, Caribs, and escaped slaves. And a part of that was from a document or from a report by the British Calendar of State Papers 1661-1668. And because that thing came from, or that story came from the British Museum, British Archive, British Library, and the British Museum, quite a lot of people tend to believe it. What we are doing today, therefore, or from here on, let's put it that way, we are going to look at the Garifuna people's history because we have been researching it, and we are going to give you what we found. Now let's go back to to last week, therefore, and answer some of the questions that were given to us. One question: did the Africans that crossed the Americas mix with the natives in the Americas? And were the explorers men and women? To answer that question, because another question came about with the same use of the word mix. We have to be careful with the word that we choose, because of the strength of the argument, the strength of the story, the fact that we have been told in the past that we were a mix of the Arawaks, the Caribs, and the escaped slaves. There is still that thing lingering in the minds of our people, including our Garifuna people, that we are a mix. So the question that asked, did the Africans that crossed the Americas mix with the natives? The answer is no. We did not mix with the natives. The word mix has a much stronger meaning. If you are asking, if the question is that some of the Africans had children with some of the native women, that's a different story. That happens just about all over the world without necessarily mixing. Mixing means that one set of people live with the other set of people, and they literally, the word mix is fine with that, but they mean that those people would live together, stay together, even though they might have started being distinct, two separate peoples, but along the way they cohabitate, they mix, and they live together, etc., and became sort of a one, which then is the mixture of the two group of people. That was not the case with the Garifuna. The second part of the question is, were the explorers men and women? The answer to that is yes. The first shipment, or the first set of people that crossed the Atlantic, had been there for quite some time, but we have to go back to what Abu Bakari did. Abu Bakari, because he is the person who is most, how would I say it, documented. He crossed the Atlantic first with 400 ships, 200 ships with people and 200 ships with merchandise. They never went back into Mali, to Africa that is. So it was men and women. The second voyage or expedition that he did was with 2,000 ships. 1,000 ships of a cargo, that is merchandise and things to sell, and another 1,000 ships of human beings, men, women, and children. So they were mixed, yes, they were men, women, as well as children. That's the answer to the first question. The second question that was asked of me is, and I'll just read you the question as it came out. Being that Urume was the oldest trading station for Garino, isn't it likely and conceivable that they not only cohabitated but mixed with the local Caribs? The questions are basically the same. Cohabitate simply means that you have children with one with the other. Even today, there are people who from one ethnic group marry or live with another person from ethnic group, but those are individuals. It's not the group. That a Garifuna woman lives with a Spanish or French or whichever other group of people, that one person lives with another, is the people just marry, husband and wife. But that's not mixing. For you to say that we are mixing, you would mean that the Garinagu, as a group of people, live with another set of people, and they live together, and they all lose the group or the ethnic group to which they belong before they began, and will produce a different set of people, if you want to put it that way. So mix is not the word. To say that it is conceivable, well, if it is conceivable, yes, it is conceivable. But did it happen is the question. The answer is no. There were, yes, every now and then, a person who lives with another from the from another set of people, so to speak, from another ethnic group, or race for that matter. But that's not mixing. We have French living with or marrying, say, a Spanish, or we have a Garifun marrying or living with a Maya woman or Maya man, but that's not mixing. That's just individuals. One or two or three, you may have quite a few cases of it, but that's not the mixing of a people. So the question to this would be, they might, well, obviously, if you're having men and women in one area, there's going to be some amount of cohabitation, but that's not mixing. So the answer to that question is no. Now, this second question continues to go on. We can see today the distinctive Amerindian features in some of our people, such as the late Paul Nabor. Well, because I said that yes, one person from one group can mix with another, but that's not the Garina mixing with the whatever race it is. That's just somebody who has a child, a baby, with another person. Let's take the case of Belize, or recently. We had some soldiers here from Britain, and they were here in Belize for quite some time. Obviously, every now and then you'll find a child who is fathered by one of the soldiers. I mean, a child with a Garifuna woman or a Creole woman or a black woman or whatever. Every now and then you'll see something like that. But that's not mixing. It isn't. So the case of Paul Nabor, I'm not going to argue as to who Paul Nabor's parents are. But the fact that one individual is the result of a cohabitation, that cohabitation means living with one another. Cohabitate, which means you live with somebody else. The fact that that happens does not mean that people are mixed. The people that we can say that they mixed and we lost the identity were the Olmecs. Olmecs were a mixture of primarily Africans. Second, the natives of Mexico, so to speak. Some of them were of Oriental descent. We don't know for sure if it was simply and only China, but it was from the Orient, from the East. And they lived in one area together. So it's only every now and then that you're going to see that this one is obviously the descendant of a black person, but with another group, maybe like Chinese or Oriental, or maybe with a native of Mexico. That happens every now and then also. But that is what we would call mixing, because they lost the original identity and became, if you want to use the word, a new people, so to speak. But that is not the case of the Garifuna people. And that's not the case of isolated individuals who happen to be parented by two people from different ethnic group or different races. That's not mixing. Garifuna people have remained basically the same. That's the other one. Then the last question that I was asked is, can you briefly clarify the claim that Abu Bakari's second remains, that Abu Bakari's remains are found in Recife? That is a result of analysis of his bones, analysis of his skeleton. And it is concluded and completed that that skeleton, that remains, belongs to Abu Bakari II. That was a serious analysis done by people. And there is indeed good evidence and good facts and good research to that, because skull and bone analysis are some of the scientific analysis and studies to find out the origin of a person. Just like more or less, not more or less, but that's more serious, but more like DNA today. When there's a controversy about the parents of a child, especially, for instance, a woman claiming that this child belongs to that man, and we go for a test, DNA test, etc. So things like that have been done about Abu Bakr II, and it is quite sure that that is the bones, or those are the bones or remains of Abu Bakr II. So, having answered those questions, let us continue with our story, or with our lecture. Last week, we spoke quite a bit about the Caribs, the Arawaks, and the African slaves, and the fact that those were not our ancestors. And the second part to it was the crossing of the Atlantic by the Garino, and it became part of the Americas, and some of us live here in America, and that we are the results of that. So tonight we are going to leave that, and we are going to look at the Christopher Columbus, that is the European side of this story. The first thing I'm going to say to you is that our schools, universities, teachers, and education system up to today continues stating and continues teaching that Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas. We still have that up to today. The very best evidence to the contrary, in other words, the very best evidence that proves that that's not the case, was Christopher Columbus himself. Christopher Columbus never said that he discovered the Americas, because Christopher Columbus did not know that he had landed in the Americas. It is the Europeans, white Europeans, who picked up that piece and spread it throughout the world. But Christopher Columbus did not say so. Christopher Columbus died believing that he had landed in Asia. Some people say that he thought he was in India, and some people thought that he believed that he had landed in Japan. Be that as it may be, Christopher Columbus believed, and he died believing, even to the last negotiation that he had with the Queen of Spain before he died. He believed he had landed in the East and not America. Columbus did not know that he had landed in America. Columbus did not know anything about the Americas. He did not. So, Columbus himself, and I'm just repeating that, Columbus himself did not say that he landed in the Americas. Christopher Columbus died believing that he had landed in Asia, but not in the Americas. Christopher's other contemporary explorers, the people that followed him. Oh, well, let's go back to that. Christopher Columbus found black people in the Americas. He found gold with those people. And the people he found with gold, he found them in Haiti and in the rest of the Caribbean, were a Mandinga Caracole people, and those are the Garino. That's what we are. I said that last week. Christopher Columbus found that gold with the natives of the Americas, and they, the natives, said to Columbus, as well as the other people that came along with him, they told them that this gold was sold to them, was brought by black people from some other parts of the world, and sold it to them. They use it as trade. And that's why we are saying to you that the black people that traded in gold, trading in different other merchandise, that those were the black merchants that crossed the Atlantic. Those are Garinagu. And they were the ones who brought gold from the old world, from the Guinea area, to the Americas. As a matter of fact, when Columbus got to see that gold and see those natives with the gold, he was flabbergasted, and as a matter of fact, he felt, here I am, at least some 16,000 miles from Europe, and I am seeing these people with gold that I see in Africa. Christopher Columbus said that. So what he did was, he bought or collected some gold from some of those people to take back to Spain so that they could assay it. To assay a metal means you break it into its component parts. And the gold that he took back to Spain to be assayed, as I said to you, is they break the metal into component parts. And that metal had 32 parts. 32 parts. 18 parts of the metal was gold. 6 parts was silver. And 8 parts were copper. Exact same thing that the people of New Guinea produced. So he was at first skeptical, but not only Columbus found that out, and he knew then that this gold was not assayed in America till late afterwards, because the Africans then taught those people how to assay gold. And the component parts, I just repeat to you, 18 parts of gold, or with gold, 6 parts silver, and 8 parts copper. That is, it had 32 parts. But it was assayed, or if you want to use the word manufactured, you can do so, in the Guinea coast of Africa. And it goes back also to Ghana, what we know as Ghana today. So that was some of the things that Christopher Columbus found in the Americas, and it told him then that he did not actually discover anything else, but the belief was with him that he had landed in Asia. Now let's get to the dates of these landings and to the story of Christopher Columbus. I told you last week that we'll get to the dates a little later on, not today, because that's a different topic. But Christopher Columbus landed in the Americas in 1492 AD. AD means Anno Domini. This from 1492 to where we are is Anno Domini. That is the new era, let's put it that way. But I told you, and this is historical and very well documented, that the Africans crossed the Atlantic some at least 6,000 years BC, that is before Christ. Okay? 6,000 years before Christ. Which means then that Columbus landed in the Americas 6,500 years after the Africans had crossed the Atlantic. You have to add the 6,000 BC. BC means before Christ. And the 2,000 in which we are today. We are 2,000 years. Plus the 6,000 that was before Christ. That gives us at least 8,000 years since since the Africans crossed the Atlantic. And that's 6,005 years ago, before Columbus. Going back to the shipwreck, where they said that we Garinagu were the product of a mixture between the Arawaks, the Caribs, and the Black Africans, that we were the results of a shipwreck of 1635. The shipwreck that these people speak about is 6,000, at least 6,300 years before the Europeans got with the ships and slavery to the Americas. We blacks, we Garinagu, had been here at least 6,300 years before that. Now, just do the math, and I don't think I need to explain that any further. One set of people got here, those who were the Garinagu, were here about 6,300 years before the shipwreck that occurred in the Caribbean during the slavery. So I don't think we need to argue any further as to whether or not we are the origin or we originate with the shipwreck, because that shipwreck is 6,300 years afterwards. We were long born before that. So that's where we are. The other piece that I want to add to that about the black gold traders, and these are the Garinagu, had already been in the Americas long, long ago, and as I said, at least 6,300 years before. Now, I told you that Christopher Columbus himself stated and said and believed and knew that he did not discover the Americas. But reports from other people, his contemporary rulers, Christopher Columbus's contemporary rulers, or that is the kings, like for instance, Don Juan of Portugal, reported cases where he saw canoes and the ships of black people crossing the Atlantic to the Americas with gold, merchandise, and other materials of exchange. Don Juan of Portugal reported that. Father Ramon, a missionary who came shortly after Columbus, reported the same thing. And Father Ramon was the one who stated, without any doubt, that the people who were trading in gold in the Americas were the Garifuna people. He didn't use the word Garifuna at first, but rather they were black people from the Mandinga and the Karakoli tribes. And those are our ancestors. Another scientist, Rafinesque, he's a linguist. He goes back and stated the same thing, that Christopher Columbus never claimed it, and that there were people here long before Christopher Columbus, and the blacks were here long before Columbus, occupying what today is the Caribbean, or if you want to call it West Indies. That is, all of the Caribbean area, Panama included, but I'll get to that a little later. Trinidad, Tobago, all the way to Haiti, Dominica, Jamaica today, etc. All of those areas were occupied by blacks. And by the way, let's go back to the lady who asked at first that since the Garifuna people occupied Urume at first. No. the Garifuna people occupied the entire Caribbean, not St. Vincent, not Urume only, or not the oldest either. They occupied the entire area from South America all the way to what today is North America. That's the United States. All of that was occupied by our people. And those were trading stations for them. In other words, when they would go home, they go back home with merchandise that they buy from those people, trade with those people, that is the natives. And when they come back with material from Africa. That was what they did. And let's get to the people that can verify that, those who say that that was what they found and that was what they knew. There is one, Rodrigo de Colmenares. Rodrigo de Colmenares was a guy who traveled with Vasco Núñez de Balboa, and those who landed in Panama. The name was Darien in those days. Darien was the name of what today is Panama. They explored Panama. Let's use the word Darien for a while. They explored Darien because that was the name. The name Darien was changed by the Spaniards after they got here, late in the game. Here is another one that I believe is something that we, the Garinagu especially, we better get this piece straight. The son of Christopher Columbus, the fellow's name is Ferdinand Columbus, related over and over and over again about the black people that he found to the northeast of what today is Honduras. And the people that he saw there are exactly the same Garinagu that we have in Honduras today. The point with that, and I want this understood because we need to understand it clearly, the Garinagu were there on the northeast coast of Honduras long before the Spaniards, and long before Columbus, long before the Europeans. So there is no reason why we have to believe that like we were just landing there. No, the Garinagu, even though the tribe that they were given names about is not exactly what Garinagu, but they knew they were Garinagu. And today, a Garifuna from Belize and a Garifuna from Honduras, a Garifuna from Guatemala, when we meet, we speak the exact same language, which tells us that we are one and the same. I want that to be clear. I want that to be understood. We were not results of shipwreck. No. There were Garinagu, as I said to you, and I repeat this also again, they occupied what today is the Caribbean. Not our ancestry. Now, get this piece straight also. Our ancestry was not and did not begin in Urume. Urume was just a station for their trading, the same as Honduras, and the same as Darien. But Darien or Panama lost their identity. So this is something that we need to remember. When I went to Honduras, about maybe 10 years ago, and I was doing research there, I ran into a lady, Filomena Barahona de Bonilla. She is from Trujillo, from Puerto Castilla, and one of the biggest boasts of that lady was that her ancestors used to tell her that the Garifuna people were there in Trujillo long before Columbus. As a matter of fact, and I want you to listen to this piece, when Christopher Columbus came to the Americas, he ran into a storm in the area close to Trujillo, Puerto Castillo perhaps. And he was almost shipwrecked. But when he escaped the storm, in other words, his ships were not completely damaged or anything of the sort, he gave a mass on the mainland of Honduras, the first Christian, the first Catholic mass in the Americas, in thanksgiving for saving him. Our ancestors, among them the ancestors of Filomena Barahona de Bonilla, were there. Obviously, they would not have understood the language because the Spaniards were speaking Spanish and they were very new. So obviously they wouldn't understand what was going on, but they were witnesses to it and they saw it. There was another family that, okay, by the way, let's get back a bit. When I got to Trujillo and I got to know, I was told that the family there in Puerto Castillo or in certain parts of Trujillo claimed that their ancestors saw Christopher Columbus, met Christopher Columbus, etc. The family is a Miranda family. And I think he was at that time the alcalde of the area that we were in. I don't quite remember the name of the town or the community. And there was another one, a member of the family Marin. So Marin and Miranda accompanied us, Felix Miranda and myself. He accompanied us to go to see Filomena is the name, not Filomena, Filomena de Bonilla. And we went to see the lady. The lady is already a sort of a mix. There is a little light skin in her. But that lady speaks better Garifuna than most of us. And she said that she is Garifuna. But she also said that she is a mezclada was the word she used, which means she was a little mixed. That would be a little, but she did not claim to be a mixture of anything else other than the fact that the father or mother, one or the other, was from the other side. So these were people, and it is said over and over again in Honduras that the ancestors tell them how the ancestors tell them about the fact that Garina were there in Honduras long before the Spaniards or Christopher Columbus or the Europeans. As a matter of fact, there's a lady working with me here at home, and I asked her to please ask her ancestors, her parents, her grandmother or something like that, if she did not hear that story with her ancestors, with her parents, with her elders. And she told me that she always hears that story with her grandmother. Definitely many people in Honduras have that story. There are those in Livingston who have the same story. So Christopher Columbus and his son stated that they found Africans in Honduras. They found Africans in the Caribbean. They found Africans in Panama. They found Africans trading in gold in those areas. And that was long before 1635. Because Columbus, just remember that, Christopher Columbus landed 1492. So 1635 is more than 100 years afterwards. The other people that saw that also, verify and stand by the statement that Africans were traveling and trading between the African coast and the Caribbean, is Amerigo Vespucci. I think most of us know that that the name that the individual Amerigo Vespucci traveled, was an explorer. And the name America comes from that man. So that the whole continent of America is called America, honoring this man. And obviously the Europeans will want to say that they discovered it. Discovered my foot. We were there long before them. But that is the whole situation in which we are. And today also, when you do history, this is not the case if you just walk over to Panama. But Panama is today what Darien was. In other words, Panama is the modern name for the town or for the place that was called Darien. Darien and Panama are one and the same, except that one with one name today and the other one with the name before. Right there in Panama, at that time, are names of areas by the Mali people, by the Mandinga people. There is a Mandinga Bay, or there was a Mandinga Bay in Panama. But when the canal was built, the Europeans started coming in. They removed the Mandinga Bay and they put another name there. Then the other one is there was a Mandinga settlement. That was where, again, and the name of the place was Mandinga. And there is another one, Caracole Point. Caracole Point, as I told you, Caracole is the mixture of the Mandinga and, the Caracole Point is named after the Caracole people who mixed with the Mandinga people, who mixed with the ancestors and produced us. There was a Caracole Point in Panama, or in Darien, might be the better way to put it. And there is also La Sierra de Mali. That is the Mali Mountains, to the south of the east of Panama. East of Panama mostly. Though they don't call them that now, but that was the name of the place. So in Panama itself, or in Darien might be a better way of putting it, there was the Mandinga Bay, Caracole Point, Mandinga Settlement, and the Sierra de Mali. But now, because the Europeans have taken over the place, they have changed the names. So the point I want to make clear to you is that Columbus never said that he discovered the Americas. He didn't say so. It was the Europeans who made a lot of that story, saying that Columbus discovered the Americas. Columbus never said that. And that they found the people there, the natives, who told them over and over and over again, and everywhere they went, that black people had been there from time immemorial, that is way, way back in history, that traded with them and even taught them quite a few things. Another thing that the Africans taught the natives of that area to make cloth. Almeza is the name of that cloth, but we'll deal with that later on. But the point I'm making now is that people like Father Ramon, Rifinesque, Rodrigo de Colmenares, Vasco Núñez de Balboa, Ferdinand Columbus, the son of Christopher Columbus, Amerigo Vespucci, and the original names of certain areas in Panama tell us that Africans had been there from long, long ago. And we have our own Garifuna people, our ancestors, our older people here in in the New World, who live in Puerto Castilla and Trujillo. And they said that they witnessed the first Christian Mass celebrated on the lands of the Americas by Christopher Columbus when he gave thanksgiving for being saved from a hurricane. And very important, Urume is not, and I repeat, Urume is not the ancestral home of the Garifuna people. No. Our ancestral home is the Guinea Coast, and especially so now that we are narrowing it down a little bit more, is Gambia, New Guinea, and that area there in Africa. But we'll get to that a little later on. So, we did not come from Urume. We used the Urume as a trading post. The Hondurans had been in that same area where they have been for the longest, the northeast coast of Honduras, and they were met there by Christopher Columbus' son and other peoples that traveled that area. So, when I go there, I have been to Honduras a few times. I am at home. As a matter of fact, I don't know anybody who is more Garifuna than those Hondurans. The way they play the music, the way they dance and everything, oh my God. Garino Gonduran. They are the people. We the Belizeans speak a lot more. We are louder. And we try to, I don't know. We speak a lot more than them about it. We want to claim that the Garifuna from Urume was sent to Honduras as if the Englishman sent our ancestors from Urume or St. Vincent to occupy a new area. No. Garina were already there. Long ago. More or less the same time that they were in Panama, in the entire Caribbean area, and all of that coast that we can talk about. This is basically where we would be today. So let's continue a little, and we can go just a little more because our time is just about up. So the two precise accounts, let's go back to more or less what we said last week. The two precise accounts of deliberate expedition across the Atlantic Ocean from the world known of then. When I say the world known of then, I mean that was the only part of the world that was known to the people at that time, to those who lived there. That is Africa, Europe, and Asia. The two deliberate accounts that were registered, recorded, and everything were, number one, the black people crossing the Atlantic Ocean, and in crossing the Atlantic Ocean started to trade with the people of the New World. There were human beings here, there were people in the New World. We will not say, we do not claim to have been the first to arrive in the Americas. No, we didn't say that, we don't say that. We crossed the Atlantic. Yes, that's what we did. Our ancestors did that. And believe me, that's a transcendental piece of event. And we are going to deal with that a little later as the lecture goes on. At that time, the only world that was known, that is before the crossing of the Atlantic, the only world that was known, the only places that were known were Africa, Asia, and Europe. It was the black that added, or that got to the Americas knowing that there was something else on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. So they were the first to say, for instance, that they added, let's put it that way, the knowledge of the Americas to the knowledge of Europe, Asia, and Africa. And that is the entire world of today. Except if you're going to be talking about the Pacific, and you're going to be talking about Australia, New Zealand, for instance. But it was our people, our ancestors, who for the first time knew that apart from Africa, Asia, and America, I mean Africa, Europe, and Asia, that there was another portion, about half of the world across the Atlantic, where people are and the lands are. So, Christopher Columbus came long after our ancestors, the Great. Christopher Columbus landed in America in 1492. That was at least 7,000 years after our ancestors crossed the Atlantic. There is a lot that we should be proud of, and we should not accept any other version of our history from anyone else. And I'm just repeating now. However, there are still a lot of us, just like the questions that I was asked. If we mixed with Africa, I mean with the Arawaks and with the natives of America, obviously, if people meet, man, by God, what do you expect? Things are going to happen. But to say that they mixed, no. And that you were to say, for instance, that they created a different kind of people or a nation, the answer is no. The importance that we have to know, though, is that the Garifuna person remains himself, the only individual and the only African we know that originates from Africa, left Africa to come over, but speaks his language, keeps his culture, keeps his tradition, and says himself, and looks like his ancestors. And let me share this little bit with you also. Our time is almost up, and I'll be finished in a few minutes. When I went to Urumai, and I have been there, I don't know how many times, when you see the Urumai blacks, not only are those girls, I mean, I have to speak about the girls because I'm a man. I'm not going to talk to you about a beautiful man or a handsome man. No, I won't do that. When you see those girls, man, beautiful girls, there was one somebody here in Belize who used to say that the black Belizeans are full of curves. You go to Urumai, you'll see those girls, those black women full of curves. That was Seferino's statement. That's not mine. They are, and they look, yes. Ronnie?
No, go ahead.
Those are people who are there, and they are indeed beautiful people. That's Urumai. They look like us, and you can easily mistake, or you can easily see one or two people there in Urumai that look exactly like some of us over here. There was one man I met some time ago, Mani Alibele, we used to call this other man from here in Belize. When I got to Urumai and ran into this man, gee whiz, he was exactly like Mani Alibele. As a matter of fact, I asked him, Mani, he didn't I left you in Belize, and here you are in Urumai. And he said, no, I'm not Manuel. I'm somebody else. But the man looked exactly like Manuel. They look like us. When you go to Nigeria, or you go to Senegal, by God, the resemblance in those people, the beautiful women, the beautiful people, you can't tell me that you are going to argue for any length of time that those are not our ancestors. Those are our people, just like us. But to add a little more to this, one of the things that the in Africa to America Park, the park that's sponsoring all of these discussions in company with Ronnie and the GAFU organization, we intend to go to Africa, to Gambia, to see if we can tie the links between ourselves and them. And we are going to do that too. Just like we go to Honduras to tie the link with the Hondurans, to go to Livingston or Guatemala to tie the link with Guatemalans, to go to Uruguay to tie the link with the Uruguay. And those of us who have traveled away from Belize to the United States, we are forming the Garifuna Nation. And we will move into that because we are one and the same people. So that's where I'll end today, because I want to pick up from the migration of the African people from the Olduvai Gorge to the northwest Africa of the and the Guinea coast for the next lecture that we are going to have. That is going to be very, very interesting and I invite you, please come back to that lecture, because that's when we are going to speak about how the Garifuna gets to be what he is, who the Garifuna people are, where they came from, and how they crossed the Atlantic. That's going to be the topic for next week. I'm certain we will not finish it, but we are going to take it up for next week. And there are some additional studies that we did, which we want to share with you. This study was the study that we took that traces our ancestry back and tells us that we were in the Guinea coast 10,000 BC. I cut that into half so that at least I'm sure that I'm not wrong when I say to you that we were there at least 6,000 years before. But the study that we had, which was a genographic study, it's a genetic study that traces your ancestry and where you came from, where you landed, and where you are. We'll deal with that next week. For the moment, please send your questions or any other thing that you want to, or comments that you will want to make, or anything that you believe I'm wrong at. Please say it and don't hold back. But in the meantime, though, what I am telling you, what I'm reading to you, and not reading, what I'm sharing with you, is the result of a study that I did for more than 20 years. And I am Dr. Theodore Randa, a Garifuna. Good evening. See you next week.
Thank you, Surusia. Beautiful information. I have two questions real quick if you care to answer.
Sure. We still have a few minutes.
Yes. The questions came from Miss Janet Witty Savio.
Yes,
she is somewhere in Texas. Again. Her question is, why did the Garifuna people from Darien in Panama and other islands that you mentioned forgot the language?
Well, part of it is basically because their home country was overtaken by other people. We can deal with that a little better next week to sort of show how people lose even their culture, for that matter. The fact of colonialism, stronger people with arms, weapons, and everything else that come in and take over the resources of a nation, crush the individuals, stop them from doing the things that they should do. Their tradition was interrupted, etc. We can deal with that next week, because it will be something to deal with a little better than just a quick answer that I'm giving you right now. But in essence, though, it's usually because of colonialism. Like for instance, when the Romans ran over Europe in those days, the Romans imposed their culture. The same thing done by the Greeks. The same thing. As a matter of fact, we, the Africans from Egypt and from the eastern part of Africa did just that when we conquered and dominated the world at the time. We did that also. So it's not anything relatively new, but the point is that another people or another, sometimes it's from among ourselves, sometimes it's from outside, stronger than us, more powerful than us. Sometimes they have better weaponry than us, and were able to dominate us and forced their culture on us.
Thank you,
And we
Doctor.
have to deal with that also, because we need to be careful that we don't lose our culture.
Thank you for that. I have
That's a brief answer, Rani. We can deal with that another day.
excellent, excellent. I have another question, Surusia.
Sure.
This one is also from Miss Witi Savio, from Janet.
Mhm.
She says, "Is Garifuna a Mande language?"
Originates. It's an offshoot of Mande and Karakole. It's not exactly a Mande language, because usually a language develops along the way. As a matter of fact, that's going to be, I think I just told you that we are going to be talking about the migration. That is when we left Aldevai Gorge and we started traveling across Africa till we got to the Caribbean. I mean, not Caribbean, sorry, Atlantic. That's a part that we are going to be discussing. We are going to be talking about how the Grenadians developed the tradition, their language, their history, their culture, and everything else. But the reason for that is you change environment. Well, one of the reasons for that is you change environment, so that, let's say, for instance, if you lived by the sea or lived on the sea, so to speak, for any length of time, you develop a culture that uses water a lot, fish, etc., and the resources from land. But if you live in the desert, you have to develop some other kind of ways of doing things to earn a living, because you don't find fish there. So these are some of the factors that come into how we sometimes lose our language, lose our culture, lose our identity, for that matter, or become different people. And that's what you call evolution. So we will deal with that for next week, or at least we'll begin to deal with that for next week, because that's a longer and a more difficult topic to deal with.
Thank you so much, Surusia. Thank you so much, and good night to you. It's been a long hour, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Theodore Aranda, all the way from Dangriga, Belize, gave his lecture on Garifuna History Lesson 2 today. Next Wednesday,
Yes.
and for the following 6 more weeks, Dr. Aranda will be back every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10 p.m. New York time, and of course, it will be 9 p.m. Belize time, Central America time. Please, we encourage you to send your comments and questions to Garifuna Heritage Foundation at yahoo.com. That's our email. You could also post your questions right here on Garifuna Language and Culture Academy Facebook page, as we will take the time to send the questions to Dr. Aranda, and next week, Wednesday, he will address the questions in their entirety. Thank you so much, Surusia. Buitugunyo. Sereme. We'll see you then. Bye-bye. Okay, beautiful ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget that the Clifford J. Palacio Garifuna Language and Culture Academy will deliver 4 8-week radio programs, starting with last week, 17th of February. We had the first class with Dr. Theodore Aranda on Garifuna history. And we will continue until the beginning of April, around April 6th, which is a Wednesday. That will be the last Wednesday class. That will be week 8 of the Garifuna history with Dr. Aranda. Then the Garifuna language class will follow for another 8 weeks, which is a class for you to learn how to speak and write the Garifuna language. Basic rules will be taught, the numbers, the colors. So we invite you and the entire family to tune in for the remainder of these 6 weeks to go with the Garifuna history, and then come back for Garifuna language classes with a recognized Garifuna scholar to be announced. He will be the one teaching the class online. This class will focus again on learning about how to read and write the language. And then the following 8 weeks of radio program will start in late June with the Garifuna Spirituality and Garifuna Duo. This class will be taught by another well-known Garifuna scholar. The final 8 weeks will be a program on these same radio stations, Radio Centroamerica and lmbroots.com, and we'll be looking at the start in early September for the last 4 8-week classes on Garifuna language again. So Garifuna language classes will be brought back in September, and of course we'll start the Garifuna classes on how to learn to write and speak Garifuna after the 6th of April. So ladies and gentlemen, this project has been made possible in part by a grant from the Alliance for California Traditional Arts in partnership with the Walter Haas and Elise Haas Fund, the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, and the James Irvine Foundation. Thank you so much. And we are going to stay with the report, of course, with Budari Palacios from Budari Dance Company coming up next, all the way from New York. Okay. Vemos ya. On behalf of Garifuna American Heritage Foundation United, we thank you for joining us tonight to the Clifford J. Palacio Garifuna Language and Culture Academy online. Don't forget, tune in every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time through www.lmbroots.com in the Bronx and www.radiocentroamerica.com in Los Angeles. Classes are free and for the entire family. Download the homework or the handout from our Facebook's Garifuna Language and Culture Academy page or from www.garifunaheritagefoundation.org. All radio shows are recorded or archived for your online demand. So you can find it on YouTube's GAFU channel anytime, 24/7. This project is made possible in part by a grant from the Alliance for California Traditional Arts in partnership with the Walter and Elise Haas Fund, the William and Flora Hewlett, and the James Irvine Foundation. Higa bonito, higa bonade, higa bo mama, higa bo